She had never lost. Not once. Not in the boardroom, not in the courtroom, not on the mat. Vanessa Caldwell built her empire on that single, unbreakable truth. And then a janitor with a mop bucket and quiet eyes took it from her in 30 seconds flat. No anger, no showboating. He just looked at her on the floor, offered his hand, and walked away like nothing happened. The crowd went completely silent, and Vanessa lay there thinking one thing. Who in the hell is this man? If you want to find out what happens when the most powerful woman in the building meets the most dangerous secret in the hallway, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The floor of Nexus Tower's main lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and burnt coffee, and Logan Hart had learned to tell time by the sound of elevator doors. 6:15 in the morning, the security desk guy, Marcus, would pour his first cup and burn it because he never waited long enough for the machine to finish. 6:40. The first wave of developers would stumble in, most of them still half asleep, clutching drinks from the cart outside. 7:05. The executive floor would start sending emails that ended up as emergencies by 9. Logan had worked at Nexus Technologies for 14 months. He knew the building the way you know a place when nobody pays attention to you, which floors had the leaky faucets, which conference rooms had the broken AC vents, which bathrooms saw the most crying. The third floor women's restroom near marketing, for the record, followed closely by the small storage room on 7 that someone had converted into an unofficial crying room using a folding chair and a roll of paper towels. He was 32 years old and pushing a mop cart down the corridor between the B-wing vending machines when his phone buzzed in his breast pocket. He already knew who it was. "Dad," Sophie's voice came through immediately when he picked up, slightly muffled because she was definitely holding the phone too close to her face again. "Mrs. Perez says we're doing the science fair in 3 weeks, and I need a partner, and Danny Kowalski asked me, but Danny Kowalski stuck a pencil in the classroom fan last Tuesday, so I don't think he's scientifically responsible." Logan stopped pushing the cart. He set the mop handle against the wall and leaned against it with his shoulder, already feeling something loosen in his chest. The specific loosening that only happened when Sophie was talking. "What's the project supposed to be about?" "Ecosystems." "And what does Danny Kowalski want to do?" A pause. "He wants to make a volcano." "Every kid wants to make a volcano." "I know. It's not an ecosystem, Dad. Volcanoes aren't ecosystems. I told him that. He said they are if something lives inside." Another pause. "Nothing lives inside a volcano." Logan almost smiled. He caught it, tucked it away. "What do you want to do?" "A tide pool. With real sand and salt water and maybe small crabs. Do you think we can get small crabs?" "We can probably get small crabs." "From a pet store or from the actual ocean?" "Sophie, I'm asking for scientific accuracy. You're 8. Scientists start young." This time the almost smile made it all the way out. He pressed his knuckles briefly against his mouth, turned slightly toward the wall so no one walking by would see it. Not that anyone walking by was likely to look at him. That was fine. That was the arrangement. "I'll look into crabs tonight," he said. "You eat breakfast?" "Mrs. Herrera made eggs." "All of them?" "Most of them." "Sophie, they were good eggs, Dad." "Okay." He straightened up, pulled the mop cart back toward him. "Go to school. Be careful on the bus. Don't let Danny Kowalski anywhere near electrical equipment." "Okay. Love you." "Love you too." He ended the call and stood there for a second with the phone still in his hand, the way he always did after talking to her. Like he needed a moment to switch back into the other version of himself. The one that existed in all the places Sophie wasn't. He put the phone away and started pushing the cart again. Whoa. Nexus Technologies occupied 32 floors of a glass tower in the financial district of Harlow City, and it had grown in 6 years from a mid-sized software firm into one of the most aggressive tech companies in the country. Its platform handled data infrastructure for healthcare systems, logistics networks, and 3 government contracts that nobody talked about publicly. Its CEO was 29 when she took the position, 30 now, and she had been on the cover of 2 business magazines in the past 18 months. Logan had seen the covers. They were framed in the executive lobby on the 31st floor, which he cleaned on Wednesday mornings between 5:30 and 7 before anyone arrived. He had looked at the photographs once, for maybe 4 seconds, and then gone back to cleaning. Vanessa Caldwell was not someone you thought about when you were mopping floors. She was someone who existed on a different layer of the building entirely. A layer with better air, better lighting, and meetings that started precisely on time because her assistant sent 3 reminder alerts and nobody wanted to find out what happened if they missed them. What Logan knew about her, practically speaking, she kept her office cold enough that the cleaning staff wore an extra layer when they went in there. She left exactly one personal item on her desk, a small framed photo he had never looked at directly, because that felt like a line. She recycled her printer paper with unusual consistency for an executive. And every Tuesday and Thursday, at exactly 5:45 in the morning, before anyone else in the building had arrived, she used the company gym on the 4th floor. He knew this because he cleaned the 4th floor on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. They had never spoken. He had passed her twice in the hallway, both times with his cart, both times when she was moving fast in the other direction with her phone pressed to her ear. She hadn't looked at him. He hadn't expected her to. That was also fine. That was also part of the arrangement. Chad, the company event was Marcus's idea, which was surprising because Marcus's ideas were usually limited to complaining about the coffee machine and betting on football games with the night security team. But apparently someone in HR had gotten to Marcus first, and the idea had traveled up through 3 departments and been approved by Vanessa's executive assistant, Diane, who had a gift for making things happen that should not logistically be possible. The concept was simple: a quarterly company mixer held in the Nexus Gymnasium and the adjoining event space on 4, designed to build cross-departmental relationships and improve employee engagement scores, which was HR language for make people feel like they work somewhere that cares about them. Logan found out about the event the same way he found out about most things at Nexus, through the paper invitation that had been slid under the door of the janitorial closet on 3, presumably by mistake, because nobody intentionally invited maintenance staff to corporate mixers. But the invitation had his employee ID number on it, which meant it wasn't a mistake. He almost didn't go. He actually decided not to go, went home, made dinner for Sophie, helped her with her reading homework, put her to bed, and then sat on the edge of his own bed in the dark for 20 minutes, thinking about the tide pool project and the small crabs and how much a saltwater tank setup would run him, and whether the science fair prize money was worth factoring in as a partial offset against the cost. Then he went to bed. The event was the following Saturday. On Friday evening, Sophie found the invitation on his dresser where he'd put it and asked what it was. He told her. She said he should go. He said there wasn't much point. She looked at him with the particular expression she had inherited from her mother. Not quite a frown, not quite disappointment, something more like patient certainty, like she already knew what the right answer was and was giving him time to arrive at it on his own. He went. The event space on 4 had been transformed. That was the only word for it. Whoever had handled logistics had strung lights across the ceiling, rearranged the gym's utility furniture into something that looked almost comfortable, and arranged food stations along the east wall that smelled significantly better than anything the building's cafeteria had produced in 14 months. Logan arrived 20 minutes late and stationed himself near the back, beside a table of appetizers he did not eat, with a glass of water he did not drink. He watched the room the way he had trained himself to watch rooms, not obviously, not with the kind of attention that drew attention back, but with a quality of awareness that sat just below the surface of looking like he was doing nothing at all. There were maybe 200 people. He recognized faces, but not names. The developers from 6 moved in clusters. The sales team was louder and taking up more space than they needed. Someone from the communications department was attempting to do a magic trick near the food stations and failing in a way that was clearly charming people rather than alienating them. Vanessa Caldwell arrived at 7:43. He noticed the shift in the room before he noticed her, a small but distinct directional change in the way people were orienting themselves, like a current adjusting. Then he saw her come in through the side entrance near the gym doors, not the main entrance, which he noted as a detail without deciding what it meant. She was wearing dark slacks and a charcoal blazer over a white shirt, and she moved through the space with the particular ease of someone who had never once questioned whether they belonged somewhere. Not arrogance, exactly. arrogance was louder. This was something quieter and more settled. She stopped to speak to people, remembered names, laughed at something a developer said near the center of the room in a way that looked genuine rather than performed. Logan watched for maybe 90 seconds. Then he looked away. He lasted another 40 minutes before he decided to leave. He set his untouched water glass down on a tray, turned toward the side exit that led to the service corridor, and walked directly into the path of Marcus, who was 3 drinks in and radiating the particular energy of someone who had just had a very good idea. "Hart," Marcus said. "Perfect. You're exactly who I was looking for." "I was leaving." "You can leave in 10 minutes. Come here." Marcus grabbed his arm, which was a thing Logan allowed to happen because Marcus was 61 and had bad knees and meant well. "We're doing a thing." "What kind of thing?" "Wait. Fun thing. Come on."
But makes some awesome chat.
The fun thing was happening in the cleared section of the gym floor where someone had laid out a foam mat, the kind that snapped together in squares. Around it, a loose semicircle of maybe 30 people had gathered, all of them watching Vanessa Caldwell, who was standing in the center of the mat with her jacket off, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands loose at her sides. Logan stopped at the edge of the circle and looked at the mat and then at Marcus. "No," he said. "She's been doing this all night, challenges people to a friendly match. Nobody lasts more than 30 seconds. It's just for fun." "No. Come on. 4 people have already—" "Marcus. Hart." Marcus turned to look at him directly, and something in his expression shifted from the 3 drinks energy to something more straightforward. "I've worked with you for over a year. I've never seen you have a conversation that lasted more than 2 minutes. I've never seen you at any company event. I'm asking you to do one thing." Logan looked at the mat. On it, Vanessa was in the middle of a casual demonstration for the crowd, showing what he recognized as a basic defensive sequence, the kind of thing you'd find in an intermediate martial arts curriculum. Her form was good. Her weight distribution was correct. She moved with the economy of someone who had put in real hours on real mats, not just fitness class hours. She was also, he could see in about 4 seconds of observation, holding back considerably from what she was actually capable of, which meant she was smart about managing the gap between herself and the people she was sparring with, keeping things light enough that nobody got embarrassed. He respected that. He still didn't want to be on that mat, but Marcus was looking at him, and somewhere across the room Sophie's voice played in his memory saying, "I never see you do anything just because it might be okay," which she hadn't actually said, but which was something she had said in different words 6 months ago that he hadn't been able to fully put down since. 2 minutes, he said. "Then I'm leaving." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. The crowd parted slightly as he moved toward the mat, not because anyone recognized him or expected anything, but because he was moving with the directional certainty of someone who knew where they were going. Vanessa saw him coming, and her expression stayed easy. The same pleasant, confident openness she had worn all night, the CEO at a company mixer, playing a game she had decided to play. "You sure?" she said. Her voice was level, with a faint trace of challenge underneath it that she probably didn't know was there. "I heard you've been going all night," Logan said. "You must be tired." Something shifted in her expression at that. Not offense, but recalibration, like she'd expected either nervousness or bravado and gotten neither. "I'm fine," she said. "Don't hold back on my account." He almost said, "I will be holding back." He didn't. They took their positions. Someone in the crowd, one of the sales guys, made a joke that got a small laugh. Marcus was somewhere behind him to the left. Diane, Vanessa's assistant, had her arms crossed and was watching with the careful attention of someone who took her job seriously enough to monitor her boss's physical activities at company events. Vanessa moved first. It was a clean opening, confident, not reckless, the kind of advance that said she was testing rather than committing. Logan shifted his weight and redirected her forward momentum with the minimum necessary contact, a slight angle change at her wrist and forearm that let her movement continue past him instead of connecting. She adjusted. Most people were surprised by the redirect and took a moment. She adjusted. He noticed this. He let her come again. The second approach was faster and came from a lower angle. Better. He pivoted, accepted the pressure on his left side, and used it to create a slow, controlled rotation that brought her around and down onto the mat in a sequence that was entirely gentle. Her back hit the foam. She was flat, staring up at the gymnasium ceiling. The room was completely silent. Logan crouched down and offered his hand. Vanessa stared at him. Up close, her face had gone through something. Surprise, confusion, the immediate reflex toward denial. And she was working through it in real time, visible, despite herself. Her jaw was tight, her eyes were entirely focused. She took his hand. He pulled her up and stepped back and said, "You have good instincts. Your second approach was better than your first." Then he turned and walked off the mat, retrieved his jacket from the back of a chair, and went out through the side exit. He was in the parking garage and halfway to his car before the silence in that room, which he could feel even through the walls, even through the distance, finally broke into sound. He didn't sleep well that night. Not because of guilt, exactly. He had been careful. He had controlled the entire sequence, managed her landing, made sure she came down on her back with her neck protected the way you protected someone who didn't know they were being protected. Nobody got hurt. It was fine. But he lay in the dark of his apartment bedroom, listening to the distant sound of the city and the closer sound of Sophie breathing in the next room. Through the baby monitor, he still kept on his nightstand, even though Sophie was 8 and had told him 3 times that she was too old for it, and he felt the familiar weight of having done something that couldn't be undone. Not the sparring match. That was small. He meant all of it, the whole general weight of having been someone once and then choosing not to be that person anymore, and how sometimes the old version of yourself showed up without permission and did things the new version was supposed to be too quiet for. He turned onto his side and looked at the wall. On the other side of the wall was Sophie's room, and in it was a small person who had his jawline and her mother's patience and a scientific interest in tide pool ecosystems that was, genuinely, the most important ongoing project in his life. He closed his eyes. The Monday after the event, he reported for his shift at 5:15 and started the 4th floor at 5:30, same as always. The gym had been restored to normal. Mats back in their storage configuration, lights reset, chairs stacked. It looked like Saturday night had never happened. He was cleaning the equipment room adjacent to the gym when he heard the gym door open at 5:47. She was 2 minutes later than usual. He continued cleaning. He heard the familiar sounds, the bag being dropped, the equipment being checked, the controlled rhythm of someone warming up. And he kept his attention where it belonged, on the supply closet he was organizing, on the stack of towels he was counting for the laundry order. At 6:03, the sounds from the gym stopped. At 6:04, his equipment room door opened. He turned around. Vanessa Caldwell was standing in the doorway in workout clothes, her hair pulled back, a water bottle in one hand. She was looking at him with the expression of someone who had made a decision and was not entirely certain it was the right one. "I come in here Tuesday and Thursday mornings," she said. "I know," Logan said. "I clean this floor on Tuesday and Thursday mornings." A pause. "So we've been in this building at the same time, at the same hour, for 14 months, he said. She absorbed this. Something moved through her face, that not quite embarrassment, not quite irritation, something more complicated than either. "You could have introduced yourself," she said. "You were always on a call." Another pause. She looked at him steadily, the CEO look, the look that was used to other people giving way, giving ground, filling silences. He didn't fill the silence. He held her gaze without challenge and without deference and waited. "Where did you train?" she asked. He went back to counting towels. "Long time ago?" "That's not an answer." "I know." She stood there for another moment. He could feel her deciding whether to push, and he could feel the moment she decided not to. Not backing down, but selecting a different angle. He recognized the intelligence in that. She hadn't gotten where she was by forcing doors that weren't going to open. "I have a question," she said. He waited. "Were you going easy on me?" He counted the last 2 towels, closed the supply closet, turned to face her with his full attention, which he didn't usually give people, and which he could see registered on her as something unexpected. "Yes," he said. Her jaw tightened. "Don't take it as an insult," he said. "You're good. You're genuinely good. I was going easy in the same way a surgeon goes easy when they're doing something that doesn't need to be done at full force. It wasn't about you not being capable. It was about the room. The room. 200 people, a company event. You're the CEO. He picked up the handle of his mop cart. There was no version of that situation where me going full force was the right call. Not because of what it would have done to you, because of what it would have done to the room. She was silent for a moment. So you made that choice on my behalf, she said. There was something sharp in her voice. Not anger, but the first edge of something that might become anger if it found the right surface. I made a choice that was reasonable given the situation. I didn't ask you to protect me. No, he agreed. You didn't. He moved the cart past her toward the hallway. She stepped aside, not quickly, not submissively, just enough to let him through. I want a rematch, she said to his back. He kept walking. Name the terms, she called after him. He didn't answer. He pushed the cart around the corner and let the distance and the sound of the hallway fill in behind him, and he didn't slow down until he reached the service elevator and pressed the button and stood there waiting, looking at nothing. His pulse was exactly where it always was, even quiet. That was something he had spent 3 years getting back to, the ability to have a conversation that hit certain frequencies without his pulse moving. He had worked at it with the same patience and deliberateness that he had once used to master other things. He was almost there. She asked about you, Marcus said, on Thursday, in the break room on 6, lowering his voice the way he did when he thought he was being subtle. Who? Don't play dumb. I've been watching security footage for 15 years. I see things. Logan poured coffee into his thermos. What kind of things? The kind where Ms. Caldwell goes down to 4 early and comes back up looking like she's thinking about something. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat in it backward, which was a thing he did when he wanted to appear casual and actually appeared the exact opposite. You talked to her? Briefly? About what? Nothing. Marcus studied him. You know she hasn't lost a sparring match in 3 years? There's a whole informal record of it. The guys on the executive security team keep track. Logan capped his thermos. You didn't just beat her, Marcus said. You beat her like it was nothing. Like she was not a beginner. I don't mean that. Like she was 2 levels below you and you were being polite about it. I was being polite about it. Logan. Marcus's voice changed slightly. The casual frame dropped, and something more direct came through. I've been at this company for 9 years. I've seen 12 janitors come and go on your floor rotation. None of them move the way you move. None of them are quiet the way you're quiet. A pause. I'm not asking for your file. I'm just saying. I see things. Logan picked up his thermos and moved toward the door. She's going to keep looking, Marcus said. People can look wherever they want, Logan said. Doesn't mean they find anything. He left the break room and walked down the corridor toward the service stairs, and he didn't think about Vanessa Caldwell. He thought about the tide pool project and whether saltwater crabs could be sourced ethically, and whether Sophie's reading homework was going well, and the 14 steps between the break room door and the service stairs entrance. He counted all of them. 14 exactly, as always. 3 days later, he came back to his locker after the morning shift and found an envelope. No name on the outside. His locker number, written in handwriting he didn't recognize, but precise, controlled, the handwriting of someone who took even small things seriously. Inside, a single card. Plain white stock. 3 lines. Roof access. Friday, 6 a.m. I won't make it a company event. No signature. He stood there holding the card for a moment. Then he put it back in the envelope, put the envelope in his jacket pocket, and went to pick up Sophie from Mrs. Herrera's. Sophie was at the kitchen table doing math homework when he came in, which she hated, and she had clearly been trying to work her way around it by drawing tide pool diagrams in the margin of her workbook, which was the kind of problem-solving he genuinely respected while also needing to address. Math first, he said. I'm incorporating marine biology. Finish the math. But she made a sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite a groan. Dad? Yeah. Did you have a okay day? She always asked it that way. A okay day, not an okay day. He had corrected it twice and then let it go because it was hers and he didn't want to take it. He sat down across from her. Outside, the city was doing what it did at 5:30 on a Thursday. Delivery trucks, a siren somewhere north, two people arguing in the apartment above theirs about something that had stopped being about its original subject approximately 12 minutes ago, based on tone. "Yeah," he said. "I had a okay day." She looked up at him. 8 years old, with a gap between her front teeth she hadn't grown into yet, and a way of looking at him that sometimes caught him off guard, even now, even still, the specific quality of attention she gave him when she was deciding whether he was telling the truth. "You seem like something happened," she said. "Math," he said. She went back to the workbook. He looked at the tide pool diagrams in the margin. Small, careful, surprisingly detailed for someone who had never been to an actual tide pool. She had drawn the layers: rock shelf, waterline, the organisms at different depths. She had gotten the basic stratification right from the library book she'd brought home 2 weeks ago. He thought about the envelope in his pocket. He thought about Vanessa Caldwell standing in the doorway of the equipment room with her water bottle and her pulled back hair, and the expression of someone who was not accustomed to not getting answers. He thought about the roof at 6 in the morning, the city spread out in every direction, and two people who had not yet said anything honest to each other trying to find the vocabulary for whatever was actually being discussed. He didn't know if he was going to go. He did know that he would spend the next 24 hours pretending the decision was still open, while already knowing, somewhere below the place where decisions lived, that he was going. Because the old version of himself, the version that had walked away from mats and training rooms, and the particular quality of being known for something, that version had showed up on Saturday night without being asked, and now it was standing in the room, and no amount of counting steps or cleaning floors or making sure every towel was folded the same way was going to put it back where it had been. He picked up Sophie's pencil from the table and handed it to her. "Math first," he said again. "Then we can look at the diagrams." She took the pencil. Outside, a siren faded north. The couple upstairs had gone quiet. Somewhere in the city, 31 floors above where he was sitting, a woman who had never lost was thinking about Friday morning, and whether a janitor who moved like a ghost had any intention of showing up. He wasn't sure what to do with the answer. But the card was in his pocket, and he hadn't thrown it away. That was, for now, enough of a signal to work with. He went to the roof. He told himself on Friday morning, standing in the service elevator with his mop cart, that he hadn't decided yet. That he was just going to finish the 4th floor, clock his hours, and see how the morning felt. He told himself that while he was cleaning the gym, and again while he was logging his supply inventory, and one more time while he was changing out of his work shirt in the equipment room at 5:52. At 5:58, he took the service stairs to the roof access door. The city was still in that particular state it only inhabited in early morning. Not quiet exactly, because it was never quiet, but operating at a frequency below its daytime register. The light was the pale gray gold of 6 o'clock in late October, and the wind off the bay moved across the roof with a steadiness that wasn't cold so much as honest. No pretending it was warmer than it was. Vanessa was already there. She was standing at the east edge of the roof with her arms at her sides, not on her phone, not reviewing anything, just standing, looking out at the city the way people stood when they were trying to think through something that wasn't resolving cleanly. She had a coffee thermos in one hand, and she was wearing a dark jacket over workout clothes, and she looked from behind like someone who had gotten there early because being early was the only way she knew how to approach things. She heard him come through the door and turned around. "You came," she said. "You left a card in my locker," he said. "That's a strange thing to do." "I had Diane find your locker number." "That's also a strange thing to do." She looked at him for a moment. "Do you want coffee? I brought extra." He didn't particularly, but he said yes, because it was 6 in the morning and the gesture was genuine and there was no reason to be difficult about coffee. She poured it into the thermos cap and handed it across. He took it. They stood at the edge of the roof with the city below them and the morning doing what it did, and neither of them said anything for long enough that it stopped being uncomfortable and became something else. A shared patience, maybe. Or two people both deciding simultaneously that small talk would be a waste of the other person's time. "I ran your name," she said finally. He looked at her. "I have an HR department and a security team and access to background verification services," she said. I want to be straightforward about that. I wasn't going to pretend I hadn't. What did you find? It wasn't quite a question. She heard the flatness of it, and something moved in her expression. Acknowledgement, maybe. Or something more careful. Military service record, 14 years. Combat instructor certification, the kind that requires federal clearance for the full file. 2 commendations I couldn't get the details on. She held the thermos with both hands now, not drinking, just holding it. And then, 4 years ago, a training accident. One of your students, a young man named Daniel Reyes. She stopped. Logan was looking at the city. His face was still. His coffee was getting cold in the thermos cap. The incident review cleared you of negligence, she said. But you resigned. I know what I did. The report? I know what the report said. He looked at her then, and whatever she saw in his expression made her stop. What else? She hesitated. Your wife. I'm sorry. Don't. His voice was even. Don't do the condolence thing. You didn't know her. No, I didn't. She accepted this without flinching, which he noted. I'm trying to understand why someone with your background is pushing a mop cart. Because it pays $11.40 an hour, and the shift starts early enough that I can pick my daughter up from school. Silence. That's the whole reason? She asked. That's most of it. She looked at him. He could see her parsing it. The intelligence behind her eyes doing what it did, sorting, categorizing, trying to build a complete picture from available information. He was used to being looked at by people who were trying to figure him out. He had spent years being looked at by people who were trying to figure him out. The trick was to not give the picture more edges than it needed. Daniel Reyes, he said after a moment. You found him? I found records of the incident. I didn't contact him. Okay. Did you? He didn't answer immediately. The wind moved across the roof. Below them, the first delivery truck of the morning ground through a gear change on the street. He watched it. No, he said. I haven't contacted him. Why not? Because some things don't get fixed by a phone call. She was quiet for a moment. What happened? If you're willing to say. He wasn't. He was not willing to say, and they both knew it. And there was a 3-second window where he could have simply said so and left it there, and she would have understood because she was smart enough to understand. But something about the morning, the honesty of the cold air, the specific quality of her attention, which was not prurient and was not competitive, which was just genuinely trying to see, something about all of it made him talk instead of stopping. Reyes was 23, he said. Good instincts, a little reckless, the way young men with good instincts usually are, because they've never had to learn what good instincts don't protect you from. He looked at the city. We were doing an advanced sequence, controlled environment. He'd done it 15 times before. On the 16th time, he came in at the wrong angle and I didn't read it fast enough. He stopped. His C5 vertebra. He walked again, eventually. But there's nerve damage in his right arm. Permanent. She didn't say anything. I had run that sequence 200 times, he said. 200 times over 6 years with different students, and it was fine. I had protocols, I had safety margins, He stopped again. It doesn't matter what I had. What I had didn't stop it. You couldn't have predicted. I was supposed to predict it. His voice didn't rise, but the weight of it changed, something firmer coming through the flatness. That was my job. That was specifically, actually my job. To be good enough to read it before it happened. And I wasn't, so I got out. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed slightly. The professional evenness had shifted, just by a degree, towards something more unguarded. I understand more than you might expect, she said, deciding that you failed at something and then removing yourself from the situation so you can't fail at it again. He looked at her. My father ran a company, she said. It came out without the usual CEO smoothness, a little more abrupt. Not this one, a smaller firm. He built it over 20 years and it was the thing he cared about most in the world. More than my mother, more than... She paused. He was a man who believed that achievement was the only real language, that results were the only honest measure of a person, that if you couldn't prove you were excellent, you were by default ordinary, and ordinary was a kind of failure. She looked at her thermos. I spent most of my childhood trying to speak that language fluently enough that he would look at me the way he looked at a strong quarterly report. Did it work? Sometimes. She said it flatly, without self-pity, which he appreciated. When I graduated top of my class, when I made partner at the firm I worked at before Nexus, when I got this position. She was quiet for a second. He called when I made the cover of Capital magazine. First time he called just to talk in 4 years. We spoke for 6 minutes and he said he was proud of me and then asked if I had considered investing in his retirement fund restructuring. Logan said nothing. So, she said, I know something about being shaped by something you didn't choose and can't put down. He turned the thermos cap in his hands. What happened Saturday night? On the mat. That wasn't something I planned. Marcus, I know, Marcus told me. He looked at her sharply. He came to my office Monday morning, she said. Full disclosure, apparently. He was worried he'd gotten you into something you didn't want. He should have worried before he grabbed my arm. Something changed in her expression. Not a smile exactly. Too complicated for that. He said you were the most private person he'd worked with. That you came in, did your work, and went home, and the only time he heard you talk for more than a minute was on the phone with your daughter. Logan said nothing. She sounds like she has opinions, Vanessa said. She has a lot of opinions. She's 8. The tide pool project. He stopped. He told you about that too. He talks. I listen. It's one of the reasons I've kept Marcus on the security desk for 9 years, even though 3 different department heads have asked me to move him to a less visible post. She looked at Logan with a directness that had dropped the last of the professional frame. He told me she's doing it alone because she couldn't find a partner she trusted. She has a candidate, kid named Danny Kowalski. She's reserving judgment. Smart girl. She's smarter than me. It came out without intention, a reflex of honesty he hadn't meant to let through, and he saw it register on her face. Not with surprise, but with the recognition of someone who knew what it was to love a person who exceeded you and to feel both the pride and the particular helplessness of that. He handed the thermos cap back to her. I should finish my shift. Logan. She used his name for the first time. He didn't know she'd known it, though of course she had. She'd run his file. I owe you an apology. He waited. I organized a rematch, she said, for the quarterly leadership event next month. I was going to make it formal, make it a demonstration, put you in a position where she stopped. I was going to use the company infrastructure to reclaim something I felt I'd lost. I know, he said. She looked at him. Diane booked the event space, he said. The event space has a cleaning schedule. I saw the booking. Her expression did something complicated. And you weren't going to say anything. What would I say? It's your company. I'm canceling it, she said. I wanted you to know that. He picked up his jacket from the small roof access housing where he'd draped it. You don't have to tell me what you cancel. I know I don't have to. There was a frustration in her voice now. The particular frustration of someone who was trying to do something she didn't have a practiced mechanism for. I'm telling you because I want to. Because what you did on Saturday, the way you managed it, I've been thinking about it all week, and I keep arriving at the same place, which is that you made a choice that was about the room and not about yourself. And I can't actually remember the last time I watched someone do that. He stood there with his jacket. That's not an insult, she said. I'm not insulting myself. I'm just... She exhaled. I'm saying I noticed it, and I think it cost you something, being seen like that. And I wanted to acknowledge it. He put on his jacket. He looked at her for a moment, really looked, the way he didn't usually let himself. And she held it without performing anything, which took a certain kind of steadiness that he recognized because he had spent a long time developing something like it himself. Next Thursday, he said. I'm on 4 again at 5:30. You'll be in the gym. Yes. If you want to actually spar, not an event, not a demonstration, no audience, I'll come in at 5:15 and we can use the East mat. She looked at him. Not to prove anything, he said, just to see what you're actually working with. Something shifted in her expression. Okay. And I'm going to be honest with you about what I see. I'd expect nothing less. He went back through the roof access door and took the service stairs down to 4, and he finished his shift at 7:30 and clocked out and took the bus to Mrs. Herrera's to walk Sophie to school, and he did not think about the roof. He thought about Daniel Reyes, the way he always thought about Daniel Reyes. Not obsessively, not in a spiral, but in the steady background way of something that had become part of the furniture of his mind. A fixed object, present without needing to be looked at directly. Sophie had forgotten her science workbook. He found this out 2 blocks from the school and turned around without a word and walked back and retrieved it from the front hall, while Sophie stood on the sidewalk with her backpack and her expression of resigned patience. "You'd forget your head," he said. "You always say that." "It keeps being applicable." She took the workbook and hugged it to her chest. "Dad?" "Yeah." "You look different today." He looked at her. "How?" She squinted at him with the critical assessment of someone who had known his face since birth and therefore had strong baseline data to work from. "Like you talk to someone," she said finally, "like an actual someone, not just Marcus and people asking for bathroom key codes." "I talk to people." "Not really." He fell into step beside her. The school was another 4 blocks. Around them, the city was doing its morning thing, people moving, cars moving, the general directed energy of a weekday. Sophie walked beside him with her workbook and her backpack and her gap-toothed face tilted slightly toward him, waiting. "I talked to someone," he said. "Who?" "A person from work." "What kind of person?" "The kind with a lot of questions." Sophie thought about this. "Are they nice?" "They're," he considered, "they're trying to be." She nodded with the gravity of someone for whom that distinction made complete sense. "That's sometimes harder," she said. "Yeah," he said, "it is." They reached the school gate. He stopped. She turned and looked up at him, and he crouched down to her level the way he always did, because she was 8 and he was aware she would not always let him do this. So he did it while he could. "Have a good day," he said. "No unnecessary pencils near any fans." "That was Danny, not me." "The warning stands." She hugged him, quick and fierce and entirely unself-conscious the way only 8-year-olds could manage, and then pulled back and went through the gate without looking back, which was also a thing she had started doing because she was 8 and had decided that looking back was a baby thing, even though he knew from the way her shoulders moved that she knew he was still watching. He stood at the gate until she went through the school doors. Then he turned and walked back the way he came, through the ordinary morning city, carrying the ordinary weight of everything he'd said on that roof, and the quieter weight of everything he hadn't. He didn't tell Marcus about the roof. Marcus found out anyway, or found out something, because on Tuesday he materialized beside Logan's cart on 6, with the expression of a man who was exercising tremendous restraint. "You know what I'm going to say," Marcus said. "Please don't." "I'm just noting that she canceled the rematch event." "I heard. And Diane told me, off the record, very much off the record, that Ms. Caldwell has been in unusually good spirits this week, which for her means she's only sent back 2 reports with corrections instead of 5. "Marcus?" "I'm just providing information. I'm an information-adjacent person." Logan looked at him flatly. "I also want to say," Marcus said, dropping the lightness, "that I know I put you in a situation Saturday you didn't ask for. And I'm sorry for that. I thought it'd be a good thing. I didn't fully think through what it would cost you to be visible." Logan stopped pushing the cart. He looked at Marcus, 61 years old, bad knees, 9 years at the security desk, a man who paid attention to things people didn't know he was paying attention to. "It's fine," Logan said. "It's not fine, but you're not going to let me make it into a moment." "No," Marcus nodded. "Fair enough." He put his hands in his pockets. "She's a good person, you know. Underneath the whole..." He gestured broadly in the direction of the executive floors. "She works harder than anyone in this building. She just got trained early to think that working hard was the same as being worth something." Logan looked at him. "You've thought about her a lot for a security guard." "I've watched her come in at 5 in the morning for 9 years, Marcus said. "You can't watch somebody do something for 9 years without developing a theory." Logan picked up the mop. "I'm going to finish the hallway now." "Of course you are." Marcus started back toward the elevator. "Thursday, 5:15. I'll make sure the East Mat access is unlocked. Logan stopped. How did you... Information adjacent, Marcus said, and pressed the elevator button without looking back. Bacham, elevator. Thursday arrived the way days did when you were both dreading and anticipating something, slightly faster than the days around it, with a quality of attention that made ordinary morning tasks feel slightly unreal. Logan woke at 4:15, which was his normal time, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table in the quiet of the apartment before Sophie was up, and did what he always did. Nothing in particular. Held the cup. Let the morning be what it was. Sophie came out at 4:40 in her pajamas and her hair looking like she'd been in a wind tunnel, which was how it always looked in the morning. She poured herself orange juice and sat across from him and blinked at the table. "You're up early even for you," she said. "I'm always up at this time." "Yeah, but you have a face." "I always have a face." "A different one." She drank her juice. "A thinking face." "Go back to sleep for an hour." "I'm awake now." She propped her chin on her hand. "Dad, can I ask you something?" When Mom was here..." She stopped, reorganized. "Did she ever make you nervous? Like, not scary nervous, just..." A pause. "Like the kind where it feels like something important might happen?" He was very still for a moment. Then he set his coffee down carefully, the way he set things down when he needed his hands to be doing something other than nothing. "Why are you asking that?" he said. "I'm just thinking about important things," she said, with the total casualness of someone who was not being casual at all. "For my ecosystem project. The tide pool project does not require information about your mother and nerves. It's for context." He looked at her. She looked back. Her mother's eyes, that specific quality of patient waiting, of already knowing the answer and letting you take the time you needed. "Yes," he said. "She made me nervous." Good nervous or bad nervous? He thought about that. Actually thought about it, the way it didn't often serve him to think about things from that particular time. "The kind where everything feels more like itself," he said. "Like the colors are slightly brighter, even the bad ones." Sophie nodded, satisfied in the way of someone who had gotten data that confirmed an existing theory. "Ecosystem project," she said. "Go get ready for school." She went. He sat with his coffee and looked at the window and the pre-dawn dark beyond it, and did not think about East Mats or 515 or a woman with a thermos and a difficult father and a company she had built on the same energy she'd spent her whole childhood trying to use to earn a 6-minute phone call. He got up, rinsed his cup, and started getting ready for his shift. The important things, he thought, sometimes announce themselves before you were prepared for them. The trick was not deciding in advance whether that was a good or a bad thing. The trick was just to show up and see. They sparred on Thursday. It was not what he expected, which was itself something he had not expected. He had assumed she would be technically precise but emotionally rigid, the kind of fighter who had learned form without learning to read the other person, which was the most common failure mode in people who trained hard in controlled environments. He was wrong about that. She read him. Not completely, not even close to the level that would have made things interesting in the way real sparring was interesting, but enough that he had to make 2 actual adjustments in the first 3 minutes, instead of just managing her the way he'd managed her at the event. He didn't tell her that immediately. He told her where her left guard was dropping. He told her that her advance telegraphed 2 beats early because her weight shifted before her intention did. He told her that her second approach was always more dangerous than her first, because she used the first to gather information, which was intelligent, but that she hadn't learned yet to hide that she was doing it, which gave it away. She listened without defending herself. That was the second thing he didn't expect. "Again," she said after the third sequence, "your shoulder." "I know about my shoulder." "You're protecting it." "Old injury?" A pause. "Climbing accident 3 years ago." "How much range?" She demonstrated. He watched, assessed, adjusted what he'd been planning to show her. "Again," she said. They went for 40 minutes. When they stopped, she was breathing harder than him, which was just math. He had 15 years of conditioning she didn't, but she wasn't embarrassed about it. She put her hands on her knees for about 8 seconds, and then straightened up and pushed her hair back and looked at him with the direct, evaluating attention she'd been giving him since the roof. "You were a teacher," she said. It wasn't a question. I told you that. No, I mean, she paused. The way you explain things. You don't talk down. You just describe what you see. That's how it's supposed to work. Most people who are good at something can't explain it. Most people who are good at something stopped having to explain it early enough that they forgot how. He picked up his water. Reyes was like that, actually. Naturally gifted. Almost didn't need explaining, which was part of the problem. It was the first time he had brought up Reyes unprompted. He heard it himself and didn't try to walk it back. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Do you miss it? The teaching. I try not to think about what I miss. That's not the same as no. No, he said. It's not the same as no. She bent to pick up her jacket. He could see her deciding whether to push further and deciding not to, which had become a pattern he was starting to appreciate. The intelligence of knowing when a door was partially open versus when it was closed and choosing correctly between them. Same time next week? She asked. I'll be on 4, he said. Same as always. The video went up on a Wednesday. Logan found out about it the way he found out about things he wasn't looking for. Indirectly, through Marcus, who appeared beside his cart on 3 at 7:45 in the morning, looking like a man carrying a piece of information he was unsure whether to deliver. There's something you should see, Marcus said. Good something or bad something? Complicated something? The video had been posted by a user account called Nexus Insider. No profile picture, created 3 days before posting. The clip was 94 seconds. It was the sparring match from the company event, but it was not the version that had circulated internally in the days after, the one filmed on someone's phone from the north side of the circle, which cut in late and cut out early, and mostly showed people's reactions. This version was different. Someone had been positioned at the gym's south corner with what was clearly a better camera, and they'd captured the entire sequence from the moment Logan stepped onto the mat to the moment he walked off it. And unlike the phone footage, this one showed everything. The quality of his stillness at the start, the first redirect, which from this angle was clearly not evasion but absorption. He had taken her momentum and moved with it rather than against it, which was a different and more sophisticated thing. And the final sequence, the controlled rotation, the guided landing, the deliberate care with which he had managed her descent onto the mat so that she went down without impact. And then, the part that the phone footage had missed entirely. The moment after. Logan crouching down, offering his hand. The 3 seconds before Vanessa took it, where she was looking up at him from the mat, and something moved through her face that the camera had caught because the camera had been close enough and steady enough to catch it, and then him pulling her up, saying something brief, and leaving. The caption read, "She challenged him. He could have embarrassed her. Watch what he did instead." By the time Marcus showed it to Logan at 7:45, it had been viewed 400,000 times. By noon, it was at 2.3 million. Logan watched it once on Marcus's phone, handed the phone back, and went back to his supply inventory. "Logan," Marcus said, "I need to finish the 3rd floor before the morning shift clears. It's going to be on the news by tonight." "Then it'll be on the news. You're going to get called by people. I don't give my number out." "Logan," Marcus put a hand on the cart handle, not stopping him, just making contact, the way Marcus communicated when he had moved past information delivery into something more personal. "You understand what's happening, right? This isn't a company thing anymore." He understood. He had understood since about 40 seconds into watching the clip, which was long enough to see that whoever had filmed it knew what they were doing and had made specific choices about framing and angle that were designed to show the most revealing version of events. It wasn't a candid video. It was an argument. And the argument it was making was not going to resolve quietly. "Do you know who posted it?" he asked. "Security is working on it. Someone on the event staff is the current theory." Marcus's jaw tightened. There was also, "Someone found the rematch booking. The one she canceled. It's in the comments." Logan was still. "Someone screenshotted the internal event calendar," Marcus said. "It's been circulating alongside the video. The narrative is that she was planning to publicly humiliate you to reclaim her reputation and then canceled it." He paused. "Which is not, I mean, that's more complicated than that. But the internet doesn't. I know what the internet does, Logan said. He let go of the cart. He stood there for a moment, doing a thing he hadn't done in years, actually calculating, the way he used to calculate before an operation. Inputs, vectors, likely outcomes. The video was out. The rematch booking was out. Vanessa's public image was going to take the kind of hit that even 2 business magazine covers didn't insulate you from. Not because the video was bad for her. It actually wasn't, or wouldn't be if people watched it clearly. But because the comment section was already constructing a story that was simpler and more satisfying than the real one. And the real one was that she had made a bad call and then reversed it, which was a thing humans did, but which the internet had limited patience for when the human in question was a CEO who had built a brand on being unbeatable. "Where is she?" he asked. 31st floor. She's been in there since 7. Is she okay? Marcus looked at him, a small, careful look, the kind that noticed things. Diane says she's functioning. Whether she's okay is a different question. Logan picked up the cart handle again. "Finish your rounds," he said. "What are you going to do?" "My job," he said. "For now." He finished the 3rd floor and took the service elevator to 31 at 9:15. It was not his floor on Wednesdays. He had no scheduled reason to be there. He knocked on Diane's desk partition rather than on Vanessa's office door because Diane was the person who actually controlled access, and also because Diane had been at Nexus for 7 years and was the kind of person who appreciated being treated like she mattered, which she did. Diane looked up at him. She was in her mid-40s with reading glasses on a beaded chain and an expression of permanent, competent composure that had developed small but visible cracks this morning. "She's on a call," Diane said. "I know. I'll wait." Diane looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "The call is with the communications team. It's been going for 40 minutes. She stopped. "It's not going well." "Okay." She's not someone who asks for..." Diane stopped again, which was unusual for Diane. "She's not going to call for backup, even if she needs it." "I know that too," he said. He sat in one of the chairs against the wall and waited. From behind the closed office door, he could hear the muffled shape of a conversation, but not the words. The tone was controlled, measured, the voice of someone keeping a very tight container around something that wanted to expand. 17 minutes later, the door opened. Vanessa saw him immediately. The surprise moved through her face and was gone in less than a second, replaced by something more complicated. Not relief, she wouldn't let it be relief, but a kind of adjustment, like she'd been braced against a particular weight and the weight had shifted. "Why are you on this floor?" she said. "I was in the neighborhood." She stepped back and held the door open. He went in. Her office was large and cold, as advertised, with windows running the length of the east wall that looked out over the city in a way that would have been impressive if either of them was in the mood for impressive views. The desk was almost clear. One legal pad with notes he didn't look at. The small framed photo he had never looked at directly, still in its place. She closed the door. She stood with her arms crossed, not defensively. More like she was holding herself together at the seams, a structural choice rather than an emotional one. 12 million views, she said. As of 10 minutes ago. It's on 3 news networks. My board chair called me at 8:30. What did he say? He said, and I'm quoting, "This is an interesting situation, Vanessa," which is board language for "I'm watching to see how you handle this before I decide how worried to be." "How are you handling it?" She made a short, controlled sound that was the cousin of a laugh. "My communications team wants me to post a statement calling it a planned demonstration of employee engagement and martial arts safety protocols." "That's a bad idea." "I know it's a bad idea." The video shows exactly what happened. Any statement that tries to reframe it is going to read as what it is, she said. "Yes, I'm aware." She turned to the window. "The comments..." She stopped. "The comments about you are... I don't care about the comments. They're saying you're a hero. They're saying you're the most decent person in the building." She said it without bitterness, but not without an edge. The edge of someone who was feeling something they hadn't organized yet. "And I'm being framed as..." There's a contingent that's decided this was a deliberate power play on my part from the start, that I organized the event specifically to humiliate an employee and that you refused to participate in it. That's not what happened. I know that's not what happened. She turned back from the window. But the version that's not what happened is significantly more interesting than the actual version. So, he sat down without being invited, which she noticed but didn't comment on. He looked at her the way he'd looked at her on the roof. Not performing patience, just giving her room. The rematch booking is out, he said. I know. Did you find who posted the video? Security thinks it's a junior event coordinator named Tara Wills. She hasn't come in today. Her jaw tightened briefly. She's not going to be fired. I want to be clear about that. She didn't do anything, technically, and the investigation is... It doesn't matter. She's not going to be made a target. He looked at her. You decided that this morning? I decided that approximately 45 minutes ago. Yes. Good call. She looked at him with the direct attention that had stopped catching him off guard. The communications team doesn't agree. The communications team is trying to protect a brand, he said. You're trying to make a decision that you can live with after the news cycle ends. A silence. She sat down across from him. On the edge of the low chair, she kept angled toward the windows rather than the desk. The less formal chair, the one that didn't have the desk as a buffer between her and the room. He noted this. The board is going to want a response, she said. A real one. Something that reframes the narrative. The narrative doesn't need reframing. The video is a pretty honest document of what happened. The video is a pretty honest document of 30 seconds, she said. The context around it is being filled in by people who don't have it. So give them the context. She looked at him. Which part? All of it. The rematch you booked and canceled. Why you canceled it. He paused. You don't have to explain everything, but the part where you made a call and then changed your mind, that's actually the most human thing in the whole story. If you let your communications team turn it into a strategy, you lose that. She was quiet for a moment. You're telling me to be vulnerable publicly. I'm telling you that the truth is already public. The only thing you're choosing now is whether to add your voice to it or let other people add their version. She looked at him for a long time. He held it. The office hummed with the particular silence of high floors, that specific quality of altitude where the city was present but muffled, like something happening behind thick glass. Tell me something, she said. Honestly. Okay. What were you thinking when you redirected me in that first sequence? She wasn't looking at the window now. Well, she was looking directly at him, and there was something exposed in it, the question she'd actually wanted to ask since she got up off the mat. What was going through your head? He thought about it. He didn't answer immediately, which she waited for. I was thinking that your weight was forward and your guard was set like you'd been sparring people shorter than you, he said. I was thinking the first approach was a test, and I didn't want to respond to a test with a ceiling. I was thinking the room was watching and you were the CEO and I was the cleaning staff, and there was only one version of what happened next that wasn't going to cost both of us something. The controlled version. The honest version, which happened to be controlled. She nodded slowly. Her hands were in her lap, relaxed now. The seams had settled. And the landing. I've put people on mats for 15 years, he said. I know how to make it a landing instead of a fall. That wasn't charity. It was just precision. I know, she said. I knew, actually, about 20 minutes after it happened. When I thought about it clearly, I knew that was what it was. She looked at her hands. It was harder to sit with than if you'd just dumped me on the mat without thinking about it. Why? Because it meant you saw me, she said. Not the CEO, not the reputation. You saw the room and you saw me in it and you made a decision that was... She paused. Nobody does that. People either go easy on me because of the position or they're trying to prove something to me because of the position. Nobody just... She stopped. Does the human thing? He didn't say anything to that. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't diminish it. My communications team is waiting, she said after a moment, gathering herself back into the organized version of herself, the one that ran a company. Tell them you're issuing a statement yourself, he said. Short, first person. Acknowledge what happened. Acknowledge the rematch booking. Say it was a bad call that you reversed because it was a bad call. 3 sentences. She looked at him. That's it? People forgive bad calls that get reversed. They don't forgive bad calls that get spun. She stood up. He stood up. For a moment, they were in the same space in a way they had been in it during the sparring sessions, but different. Not adversarial, not evaluative, just 2 people standing in the same room with an understanding between them that was still being named. Logan, she said. Yeah. The video. Of you. She hesitated, then said it clearly. It's going to bring attention. People are going to want to know who you are. I know. If they dig, they'll find the accident, he said. They'll find Reyes. They'll find what I walked away from. He picked up his jacket from the chair arm. That's fine. It doesn't feel fine. It's been 4 years, he said. I'm tired of carrying it like a secret. Secrets get heavy. He moved toward the door. Reyes knows what happened. I know what happened. Whatever the internet decides doesn't change that. He had his hand on the door when she said, Have you thought about contacting him? He stopped. His back was to her. Daniel Reyes, she said. Have you thought about reaching out to him? Every day, he said. For 4 years. What stops you? He didn't answer for a moment. The same thing that stops most people, he said finally. The idea that the thing I'm afraid of hearing is worse than the silence. He opened the door. Issue the statement yourself, first person. Keep it short. He went out into the hallway and took the service stairs back to 3 and picked up his card and finished his shift. And he kept his phone face down in his pocket all day as the notification count climbed to a number he stopped tracking after the first 100. The statement went up at 2 in the afternoon. Vanessa posted it herself, not through the company account, through her personal profile, which had been used primarily for professional announcements and which had never seen anything like this. It read, What you see in that video is real. He moved with more care and precision than the situation required, and I've spent the past week trying to understand what that says about character versus what it says about me. I also want to be honest. I briefly organized a formal rematch event, and I canceled it because it was the wrong call. I canceled it because someone I was only beginning to pay attention to made a decision on a mat that was about the room, not about winning. I have a lot to learn from that. I'm starting. No PR language, no strategy. 3 short paragraphs, the last of which was those 4 sentences. By 6 o'clock, it had been shared 200,000 times. By 8, someone had tracked down Daniel Reyes. Logan found out about this the way he found out about the video, through Marcus, this time by text, at 8:47 in the evening, while he was sitting at the kitchen table helping Sophie with the multiplication tables she had decided were personally offensive. Marcus's text said, A reporter found Reyes. He agreed to a brief interview. You should probably look at it. Logan put his phone face down on the table. Dad, Sophie said, 7 times 8. 56. You didn't even think. I've known that one for 30 years. She wrote it down. 7 times 9. 63. She wrote it down. She looked at his phone face down on the table between them. She looked at him. She didn't ask. She was 8 years old and had inherited, among other things, an instinct for knowing when a question would land wrong. 7 times 7, she said. 49, he said. He waited until she was asleep. He sat on his bed in the dark and pulled up the interview, 2 minutes and 14 seconds, filmed on someone's phone outside what looked like a physical therapy facility. Daniel Reyes was 27 now. He was standing straight, his right arm held slightly differently than his left. The old compensation he'd probably built into his posture, so gradually he no longer noticed it. He had a light beard and the particular steadiness of someone who had been asked a hard question many times and had worked out his honest answer to it. The reporter asked him about the video, about Logan Hart, about the accident. Reyes said, I know what the internet is doing with this right now, and I want to be clear about something. What happened in that gym 4 years ago was not Logan's fault. It was a training accident. Things like that happen even when everyone does everything right, and Logan was the most careful instructor I ever worked with. I've said this to people who've asked me before, and I'll keep saying it. He paused. He blames himself. I know he does. I want to say, publicly, in case he's watching this, he shouldn't. I don't. Logan sat in the dark of his bedroom and watched Daniel Reyes say these words and felt something move in his chest that was not quite relief and not quite grief, and was maybe just the sound of a door opening that had been shut for long enough that he'd forgotten what was behind it. He watched it again. Then he put his phone down and sat very still in the dark and let the city outside be what it was, with all its ordinary noise. And he breathed through the thing in his chest, and he let it be there, without trying to put it somewhere or turn it into something manageable. Sophie was breathing in the next room. The baby monitor was on the nightstand. He sat there for a long time. He called Daniel Reyes on a Saturday morning. Sophie was at a classmate's birthday party, the first one she'd been invited to since starting at her new school, which she had treated with the appropriate gravity of a diplomatic mission, spending 40 minutes the night before deciding what to wear, and ultimately landing on a compromise between what she called her science fair outfit and what Logan called something that would survive a birthday party. He dropped her off at 10 and drove back to the apartment and sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes before taking out his phone. He had found the number through channels he still had access to, old contacts who didn't ask why he was asking. The number had taken 2 days to locate. He had been carrying it in his phone for 3 more days without calling. He called. It rang 4 times and he was already deciding how to phrase the voicemail when Reyes picked up. Hello? The voice was the same. Slightly older. More settled, maybe. The way voices settled when people had been through things and arrived somewhere on the other side. But the same. Reyes, Logan said. It's Hart. A silence. Not hostile. More like someone taking a breath they'd been waiting to take. Yeah, Reyes said. I figured you'd call eventually. I saw the interview. I figured that too. Logan looked at the parking lot. A woman with a stroller was navigating the curb cut across the street, the particular focused determination of someone managing a complicated object in public. He watched her get the front wheels over. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know I didn't have to. Reyes's voice was even. I wanted to. I've wanted to say it somewhere you'd actually hear it for about 3 years, so when the opportunity showed up, I used it. You could have called me. Could I? Did I have your number? Logan was quiet. I tried, actually, Reyes said. About 18 months after I got out of rehab, the number was disconnected. You were wherever you went. Harlow City. Yeah, that wasn't in the file either. A brief pause. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I want you to understand I wasn't sitting around waiting for an apology. I worked through it. I had people who helped me work through it. I got to a place. How's the arm? It's there. 70% of what it was on a good day. 60 on a bad one. He said it without performance, just fact. I retrained. I'm a strength coach now. Modified programming, mostly. Work with people who have partial mobility limitations. Turns out it's a thing I'm actually better at because I know what partial mobility feels like from the inside. Logan absorbed this. Reyes. Don't, Reyes said, but not unkindly. Don't do the apology thing right now. I've thought about what I'd want from this call if it ever happened, and it's not that. I don't need the apology. I need you to hear me when I say it was an accident. I came in wrong. You know I came in wrong. You've known that for 4 years, and I think you've been using it as a reason to disappear, and I want you to stop. Logan's jaw tightened. You were the best instructor I ever had, Reyes said. You taught me more in 14 months than the previous 6 years combined, and whatever happened on that day, whatever that one moment cost, it doesn't cancel what you gave me before it. That's not how accounting works. Not for me. The woman with the stroller had made it across the street. She was moving down the sidewalk now, easier, the obstacle behind her. I've been a janitor for 14 months, Logan said. A pause. I know, the internet told me. Another pause. How's that going for you? It's a job. Is it what you want to be doing? He didn't answer immediately. I wanted to be invisible for a while. And now? Now I don't know. That's progress, Reyes said, without irony, the same flat honesty he'd had at 23 that apparently survived everything. Listen, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You never liked that even when you were the one running the class. But I'll say this, the thing you're good at, the teaching, the reading people, the knowing how to show someone where they're going wrong without making them feel like garbage, that's not a thing that goes away because you stop doing it. It's just a thing that's not being used. Logan looked at the steering wheel. You still there? Reyes said. Yeah. Okay. A pause. I'd like to get a coffee sometime. If you ever come through, I'm in Meridian now. Or if you're willing to do a phone call that isn't this one. Yeah, Logan said. I can do that. Good. Another pause. Heart. Yeah. I'm glad you're okay, or working toward it. Whatever that is right now. Working toward it, Logan said. Yeah. They hung up. He sat in the parking lot for another few minutes and then went upstairs and made lunch, and didn't think about anything in particular until it was time to pick up Sophie. Monday morning, Vanessa was in the gym at 5:40, 3 minutes earlier than usual. He was finishing the equipment room. He heard her come in, heard the bag drop, heard the slightly different quality of movement that told him something was off before he even opened the door. He finished what he was doing. He went to the gym door. She was on the mat running a solo sequence he recognized, one of the advanced forms, technically clean but pressed too hard, the kind of practice you did when you were working something out through your body because it hadn't resolved in your head. He went in and stood at the edge of the mat. She stopped. You don't have to stop, he said. I know. She straightened up and pushed her hair back. Her face was carefully composed, but there were shadows under her eyes he hadn't seen before. Board meeting ran until 9 last night. I didn't sleep well. The video, the board, the communications team, my father. She said the last word with a slight change in tone, flatter, a little more clipped. He called Saturday. Apparently I've been making myself a target and inviting public scrutiny through emotionalism. Logan moved to the edge of the mat and sat on the bench. What did you say to him? She was quiet for a moment. I said thank you for calling. She sat down on the other end of the bench, which was not what I wanted to say, but it was what I had the energy for. What did you want to say? She thought about it, not performing the consideration, actually thinking. I wanted to say that the statement I posted got more genuine public response than anything the company has produced in 2 years. I wanted to say that the board chair, who called to give me what I expected to be a very uncomfortable conversation, told me it was the most authentic thing he'd seen from a CEO since, his words, the 90s, when people were allowed to be actual human beings in press. I wanted to say that the statement worked not because my communications team wrote it, but because it was true. And it was true because I was paying attention to someone who doesn't perform anything. She looked at him. That's what I wanted to say. Why didn't you? Because he would have turned it into a discussion about emotional intelligence and leadership and whether I was being influenced by an employee, and I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of that frame. So you protected yourself. I protected the conversation from becoming something I'd have to manage for the next 3 weeks. She paused. Which is also protecting myself. Yes. He looked at the mat. I called Reyes. She went very still beside him. Saturday morning, he said, while Sophie was at a birthday party. How was it? Hard. Good. He thought about how to say the next part. He told me he retrained. He works with people who have mobility limitations now. He said the accident gave him a specific kind of knowledge you can't get any other way. He stopped. He said it like it was a fact, not like he was trying to make me feel better. That was the part that was hard to sit with. When someone forgives you cleanly, without conditions. Vanessa said nothing for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. That's actually harder than anger, isn't it? Anger gives you something to push against. Yeah. Forgiveness just lands. Yeah. He turned the water bottle in his hands. He said I should stop using the accident as a reason to disappear. Smart man. He was always smart. He just needed someone to teach him how to slow down long enough to use it. Another silence. Outside the gym windows, the morning was doing its slow brightening, the city rearranging itself from night mode to day mode, a process that was never quite visible in motion, but always different between one check and the next.
I owe you an apology, Vanessa said. He looked at her. A real one. Not the statement. That was real, but it was also public, and it was about me taking accountability in a space where I needed to be seen taking accountability. She held his gaze. I'm talking about what I did before the video, before the roof, before any of it. I organized an event to use you, to use your presence in my building to reclaim something that was hurt. I didn't think of you as a person in that moment. I thought of you as a problem to be solved. She paused. That's not who I want to be, and I want you to know I know it. He looked at her for a long moment. I'm not angry about it, he said. I know you're not. That almost makes it worse. Why? Because if you were angry, I could try to fix it. When you're not angry, I just have to sit with having done it. He almost smiled. Welcome to how forgiveness works. She looked at him. Then something in her expression shifted. The professional frame came down the rest of the way, and what was underneath it was just a person, tired and honest. I don't actually know how to do this, she said. This, whatever this is, talking to someone like this, I have a communications coach and an executive therapist and 3 VPs who are excellent at telling me things I need to hear in the least uncomfortable way possible. She looked at her hands. I don't actually know how to just talk. You've been talking. This is different. Yeah, he said. It is. He said it without looking at her, and she didn't look at him, and the morning went on doing what it did. It was the most honest thing either of them had said, and neither of them underlined it, which was, he was starting to think, how honest things worked between two people who were both wary enough to know that underlining them made them smaller. The Thursday session that week was different. Not in the technical content. He still corrected her guard, still called out the weight shift tell, still pushed her to her actual limit rather than the limit she presented at the start of sessions. But the dynamic had shifted by some degree that was hard to name. Less evaluation, more presence. She pushed harder. He pushed back more honestly. Once, in the middle of a sequence, she said something that surprised him. Not a complaint, not a question, just an observation. You're faster when you're not managing me, she said. He had just redirected her third approach in a row, and he stopped because she was right, and because he hadn't realized she'd noticed. You do that, she said, not combative. You manage the gap. You keep it close enough to be useful, but you don't let it open all the way because you think it'll be discouraging. It's teaching, he said. You calibrate. I know, but I want to see the whole thing. She adjusted her stance. Whatever you're actually capable of, I want to see it. That's not a useful exercise at this stage. I'm not asking for it to be useful. I'm asking for it to be real. He looked at her. She was serious. The competitive piece of it was there. It was always there. It was part of her constitution, but underneath it was something else. The desire to see a thing clearly, even if it was humbling. He recognized this because it was the same thing that had made Reyes a good student, the willingness to be measured against the actual standard rather than a managed version of it. He took a different stance. What happened in the next 4 minutes was not a teaching sequence. It was him at about 70% of capacity. Nowhere near full. He would never take that to a gym setting, but substantially beyond anything he'd shown her before. She lasted longer than he expected, which he noted without saying. She adapted. She made 2 adjustments mid-sequence that were genuinely intelligent. She ended up on the mat twice, and both times she got up without drama. And the second time she was breathing hard, and there was a light in her eyes that was not about winning. Okay, she said from the floor the second time. Okay, he agreed. He offered his hand. She took it. He pulled her up and didn't immediately step back, and for a moment they were standing closer than they had been since the event. And neither of them moved away immediately, which was a thing that happened and was not discussed. She stepped back. Thank you, she said, and it was the most unframed thing she had said to him. No context, no qualification, no professional architecture around it. You made 2 adjustments in the second sequence that most people at your level don't make, he said. Which ones? The drop to your left when I shifted pressure, and the redirect on the third exchange. You stopped trying to match force and went with momentum. That's not instinct. That's something you worked out. She was quiet for a second.
You've been teaching me that since the first session. I've just been slow to apply it. You applied it under pressure. That's different from applying it when you have time to think. He picked up his water. That's the whole thing, actually. That's the whole game. When it's slow and comfortable, anyone can apply it. The question is whether you can do it when everything is moving. She looked at him steadily. Is that just about sparring? He looked back. No. She nodded once, slowly, the gesture of someone filing something away in a place they intended to return to. Shut. The following week, Vanessa called a company-wide meeting that her executive team had not been briefed on in advance, which was unprecedented enough that Diane had triple confirmed the calendar entry and then quietly warned 3 department heads to clear their afternoon. Logan found out about it through Marcus, who found out about it through Diane, which was the standard information pathway. He was on 2 finishing the afternoon circuit when Marcus materialized. She's doing something, Marcus said. She usually is. No, I mean, Marcus looked unusually uncertain. She's called the whole company, every department. She's not using the auditorium, she's using the main floor, the open plan on 12. She told facilities to clear the center and set up a circle, not a stage. Logan stopped mopping. A circle, he said. Chairs in a circle, no podium, no presentation screen. Marcus shook his head. Diane says she's had 3 phone calls with the board chair this week, and after the last one, she came out of her office and told her executive team she was restructuring the Q4 leadership agenda and she needed 48 hours. Logan went back to mopping. You're not going to go? Marcus asked. It's not my floor. It's an all-company meeting. I'm maintenance. Logan. Marcus stepped in front of the cart. In the past 3 weeks, you've had 2 conversations with this woman that I'm fairly certain have restructured the way she thinks about running a company. I've been watching her for 9 years. I know the difference between Vanessa Caldwell in professional mode and Vanessa Caldwell actually moving through something. He paused. She's moving through something. Logan looked at him. I'm not asking you to go for her sake, Marcus said. I'm asking you to go because you've been in this building for 14 months, and the only time I've seen you look like a person instead of a very well-functioning system is when something actually asks something of you. He left the cart in the corridor. The 12th floor was full by the time he got there. Not auditorium full, not quiet and directed toward a stage. Just full, the way a space was full when people were actually present rather than performing attendance. The chairs were arranged in a wide circle, maybe 150 of them, and most were occupied. People were talking to each other, developers and communication staff and accounting people who Logan had only ever seen in the elevators, all in the same room, no hierarchy visible in the physical arrangement. He found a chair near the outer edge. Vanessa was already in the circle, not at a designated position, just in a chair, same height as everyone else's, her jacket folded over her knees. She saw him come in. She didn't signal it, didn't acknowledge it, just saw him and he saw her see him, and that was that. She started talking when the room settled. She didn't use notes. She didn't use a presentation. She started by saying she wanted to tell them what she had been thinking about for the past 3 weeks, which was this, that she had spent 6 years building a company on metrics she'd inherited from a culture she'd never interrogated, and that a 94-second video of a janitor not humiliating her had done more to reorganize her thinking than 6 years of quarterly reports. Laughter. Real laughter. The surprised kind. She talked about the rematch booking. She talked about canceling it. She talked about what she had been learning in early morning sessions on a gym mat, about the difference between force and precision, between winning and making the right call for the room. She talked about Tara Wills, the event coordinator who had posted the video, who was in the room. Logan could see a young woman in the 3rd row of chairs go very still. And she said that she was not going to be disciplined, and that the footage had been honest documentation, and that honest documentation of the people in this building doing right things was something she wanted more of, not less. She talked about what she called the gap problem, the way expertise created distance, the way authority created distortion, the way leaders stopped getting accurate information because the information had to travel through too many layers that were invested in making it palatable. She said she had watched someone manage that gap deliberately, with care, in a way that gave the other person something real instead of just protecting them from something real. And she had been trying to figure out how to do that at a company level. She said she wanted to reorganize how they ran their quarterly leadership reviews. She said she wanted cross-departmental feedback structures that weren't anonymous because anonymous feedback created honesty without accountability, and accountability without honesty was already the problem. She said she had ideas, and she wanted the room's ideas, and she was genuinely asking, not performing asking. She spoke for 22 minutes. Afterward, the room didn't immediately break into the usual post-meeting exodus. People stayed. Conversations started. Logan watched from his chair as the department heads, who had come in with the practiced wariness of people expecting a policy announcement, left, looking like people who had been given a permission they hadn't known they were waiting for. He stood up to leave. Vanessa was across the circle, talking to a group from engineering. She glanced over just briefly, and he gave her a single nod. The specific nod of someone who has seen a thing done well and is not going to make it into a larger gesture than it needs to be. She held it for a second, then went back to the conversation. He went back to 2, picked up the cart, and finished the afternoon circuit. 3 days later, on a Friday evening, he picked Sophie up from school, and they stopped at the aquarium supply store that had opened 3 months ago on Clement Street and spent 45 minutes examining saltwater tank options with a level of seriousness that the teenage store employee had clearly not anticipated from a man and his 8-year-old. Sophie cross-referenced the store's tank specs against the notes she had made from the library book. She asked the employee 2 questions he couldn't answer and 1 question Logan answered from memory, which made Sophie give him the look she gave him when he accidentally revealed competence in an unexpected area. "You know about saltwater tanks?" she said. "I know a little about a lot of things." "Why?" "Because that's what happens when you spend enough time paying attention." She considered this. "Is that what you tell people? At work?" "I don't tell people much at work." "But is that what you'd tell them?" He looked at her over the tank specs. "Maybe," he said, "if they asked." She went back to the specs. "I think you should tell people things more," she said, with the offhand certainty of someone stating an obvious fact. "You know a lot. It's wasteful." "Wasteful," he repeated. "That's the word." She pointed at a mid-sized setup with a sand substrate included. "This one. It has the right depth for stratification." He looked at the price tag. He looked at his daughter. He thought about what Reyes had said about unused things. He thought about a circle of chairs on the 12th floor and a woman who had decided in front of 150 people to try something she wasn't sure she could do. "Okay," he said. "That one." Sophie's face did something she was already too old to let it do in public. A flash of pure, unguarded happiness, the kind that hadn't learned yet to be managed. He paid for the tank, and they carried it home in 2 trips, and that evening he sat on the living room floor assembling the substrate layer while Sophie read the stratification instructions aloud in a voice that was trying very hard to sound like a scientist and not like an 8-year-old who was very excited. Outside, the city made its ordinary evening sounds. Inside, the 2 of them worked on the small ecosystem that Sophie was building, that Sophie was going to stand beside in front of her class and explain with a confidence he recognized and had not given her. She had come to it herself. And he thought that maybe that was what Reyes had been trying to tell him, that the things you grew in someone else didn't disappear just because you stopped tending them, that they went on. The tide pool project won 2nd place. Sophie came home from school on a Thursday with the ribbon in her hand and the expression of someone who had very complicated feelings about 2nd place and was working through them in real time. She put her backpack down by the door, put the ribbon on the kitchen table, and sat across from it like she was having a staring contest with it. Logan came in from the kitchen with 2 glasses of water and put one in front of her. "2nd place is good," he said. "I know 2nd place is good." "Who got first?" "Alicia Brennan. She did a butterfly migration study. She had a real butterfly chrysalis." Sophie looked at the ribbon. "A real one. It hatched during the presentation." He sat down. "That's hard to compete with." "It hatched, Dad. Right there. In front of everybody." Mrs. Perez cried. "Okay, that's just luck." "It was great luck." Sophie picked up the ribbon and turned it over in her hands. "But my stratification was really accurate. Alicia's chrysalis didn't have stratification." "Butterflies generally don't, no." Sophie looked at him. "Did you actually come to watch?" "I was at the back.
You were explaining the oxygen levels in the lower substrate zone. You didn't miss a word. I practiced on Mrs. Herrera. I know, she texted me. Sophie set the ribbon down and picked up her water. She drank it with the expression of someone who had made their peace with something. Danny Kowalski's volcano didn't place. What happened? Too much baking soda. It went sideways. She paused. Into the display table. It got on Tyler Marsh's solar system. Was anyone hurt? Just Tyler's feelings. Another pause. And the volcano. He did not smile. He came very close and did not.
Sophie looked at him, and the not smile became visible to her because it was always visible to her, and she grinned the gap-toothed grin that she had recently decided was embarrassing in public, and had therefore been selectively deploying only at home, which made it feel like something given, something chosen. "Second place is actually okay," she said. "Second place is actually okay," he agreed. She picked up her backpack and went to her room to start homework. He stayed at the table and looked at the ribbon for a moment, the small blue fabric with its silver print, the evidence of a project about stratification and ecosystems that an 8-year-old had built in their living room with borrowed library books, and a saltwater tank, and a father who had assembled the substrate layer on the floor while she read instructions in her scientist voice. It was the most ordinary kind of good thing, the kind that didn't announce itself, the kind you had to be paying attention to notice. He noticed. The envelope appeared on his locker, not slid under the door this time, but taped to the front, which meant someone had put it there openly, not covertly. His name in handwriting he recognized now, the precise, controlled script of someone who took even small things seriously. He opened it at the end of his shift, standing by his locker with his work shirt still on. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Not a card this time. A full page, covered front and back in the same handwriting, which was unusual because Vanessa Caldwell communicated primarily through her assistant or through the kind of short, precisely worded messages that said exactly what they needed to and nothing additional. This was not that. He read it in the parking lot, sitting in his car with the engine off. "Logan," it began, without preamble. "I've started this 4 times and thrown out the previous 3 because I kept writing it the way I write board communications, which is to say structured and defensible and designed to minimize the chance that the reader will find something to disagree with. I'm going to try to write it the way you talk, which is to say without architecture. I received something this week that I want you to know about. I don't know if she told you she was going to send it. I suspect not, because from what I understand about her, she does things on her own timeline and in her own order. Sophie wrote me a letter." He stopped reading. He read that sentence again. Then he kept going. It arrived at the company address, which means she looked up the company. I don't know how she got the specific mailing address. I'm guessing she asked Mrs. Herrera, or possibly the internet, which apparently has no real barriers for determined 8-year-olds. The envelope had my full name on it, spelled correctly, which I found out later she had looked up to make sure. The return address was your apartment. She wrote 3 paragraphs in pencil, in handwriting that is clearly trying very hard to be neat. She introduced herself as Sophie Hart, age 8, and said she was writing because she had something to say to me, and her father had taught her that if you had something to say to someone, you said it directly. She said she knew I worked with her father. She said she didn't know everything about what had happened at the company event or with the video, but she knew something had changed in the past few weeks because her father had started smiling at things that weren't jokes. She said, and I want to quote this exactly, "He smiled at the radio on Tuesday, and it wasn't even a good song. She said she wanted to thank me for whatever my part was in that. Then she said something I've been thinking about for 3 days. She wrote, 'My dad has a lot to give people. He just forgot that people want it. I think maybe you reminded him.' And then she signed it, respectfully, Sophie Hart, the scientist, not the janitor. That's my dad." He sat in his car with the letter in his hands and the late afternoon city going about its business outside the windshield, and he did not do anything for approximately 90 seconds. He had not known about the letter. Sophie had not mentioned it. He tried to remember if there had been a moment in the past week where she had been unusually occupied, and he found it last Sunday afternoon while he was doing laundry. She had been at the kitchen table for 2 hours with what he had assumed was homework. She had asked him once how to spell respectfully. He had spelled it for her without asking why. He folded the letter back into the envelope. The letter continued on the back of the page. He had stopped reading when he reached Sophie's name, and he sat there for another moment before he turned it over and kept going. I've been trying to figure out what to do with what she wrote, because I'm not used to receiving things I don't know how to categorize. The honest answer is that it moved me in a way that very little has moved me, and I've been sitting with that for 3 days instead of deciding what to do about it. Here is what I think I want to say. I came into this, whatever this is, these weeks, these conversations, with the assumption that I was pursuing an answer to something. Who you were, why you moved the way you moved, what the sparring match meant. I came into it the way I come into most things, which is with an objective and a method. I don't think I have an objective anymore. I think what I have is something much less organized and considerably more inconvenient, which is that I look forward to Tuesday and Thursday mornings in a way that has nothing to do with the sparring. I look forward to the conversation, to the version of myself I seem to be when I'm talking to you, which is less defended than the version I take everywhere else. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm aware that I have significantly more power in this building than you do, and that this letter could be read as, I'm aware of the complications. I'm not asking you to respond. I'm telling you this because Sophie told me her father taught her to say things directly to people if you have something to say, and I thought that was advice I should take. I'm also going to tell you something separate, which is that I want to propose something professional. I'll explain that in person, if you're willing. Same time, same floor. I'll be there. Vanessa. He read the letter twice. Then he put it in his glove compartment, started the car, and drove to pick up Sophie from Mrs. Herrera's. Sophie was at the kitchen table doing math when he came in, and she looked up at him with the baseline assessment that she performed every time he walked through the door, the rapid check of his face that she had been running since she was old enough to read him, the check for whether today had been a hard day or a manageable day or a something happened day. She read him immediately. Something happened, she said. Math, he said. You have a face. Sophie. The letter face, she said, and went back to her math, which told him everything. He sat down across from her and waited until she finished the problem she was on. She wrote the answer, checked it, put her pencil down. You wrote to Vanessa Caldwell, he said. She looked at the table. Then she looked at him. There was something slightly defensive in her posture, the set of her shoulders that appeared when she'd done something she believed was right, but knew might get complicated. I had something to say, she said. You looked up the company mailing address. Mrs. Herrera helped. You spelled respectfully correctly. You helped with that one. She looked at him carefully. Are you mad? He thought about it genuinely, the way she deserved. No, he said. Are you embarrassed? A little. She nodded, accepting this as reasonable. I thought someone should tell her, she said. You never would have. You don't know that, Dad. She looked at him with the particular patience of someone who knew him better than he knew himself in specific areas. You would have waited until you had figured out the exact right way to say it, and then by the time you figured it out, it would have been years and I'd be in college. He opened his mouth and closed it. She picked her pencil back up. Is she nice? Sophie asked. In person. She's... He thought about the roof, the gym, the circle of chairs on 12, the letter in his glove compartment. She's trying to be. That's what you said before. It's still true. Is trying enough? He looked at his daughter. 8 years old, second-place ribbon on her dresser, a saltwater ecosystem on the living room shelf, a letter written in pencil to a CEO she had never met because she had something to say, and she said it. Yeah, he said. I think trying is actually most of it. Tuesday morning, 5:15. He was on the east mat when she came through the gym door, and she stopped when she saw him already there. A small pause, a recalibration, before she crossed the floor and set her bag down. You came early, she said. I'm usually here before you, he said. You just don't normally know it. She looked at him. Something in her was being held carefully, the same way she had held things on the roof, prepared for multiple outcomes. You got the letter, she said. I got the letter. I shouldn't have. It was fine, he said. It was honest. I don't have complaints about honest. He looked at her steadily.
Sophie wrote to you. The careful holding shifted. She did. I didn't know she was going to. I know you didn't. What she wrote was true, Vanessa said. Whatever you're about to qualify about it, it was true. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't true to make the conversation more comfortable. She paused.
You've been smiling at radios. He pressed his mouth together briefly. I'm going to have a word with her about disclosure. She's 8, and she's remarkable. She is, he said. She's also occasionally a public liability. Vanessa's expression did something it had been doing more in the past few weeks. The controlled surface giving way to something more unguarded. Something that was actually amusement rather than performed amusement. It changed her face considerably. He had noticed this happening with increasing frequency and had been trying, with limited success, to not track it. You said in the letter you had something to propose, he said. Professional. She came and sat on the bench. He remained standing for a moment and then sat beside her, the same arrangement they'd had since the first Thursday, parallel, facing the mat, the distance between them neither close nor performatively far. I've been restructuring the leadership development program, she said. I told the board last week that I wanted to rebuild it from the inside rather than bringing in an external consultancy. They were skeptical. I made the case. She paused. I want to build a program that teaches what you actually taught me, not martial arts, though that can be a component if you're willing, the principles, the gap management, the difference between force and precision, self-regulation under pressure, how to read a room and make decisions that are about the room rather than your own position in it. He was very still. It would be a formal position, she said. Compensation that reflects a formal position, not what you're currently making. I want to be completely clear about that. This is not charity. This is not me finding a way to keep you in the building under a different title. What you know about how human beings move through conflict, how they regulate themselves, how expertise creates blind spots, that's worth something real. I'm a janitor, he said. I don't have credentials for... You have 14 years of military instruction, 2 federal commendations, and a track record that your file, when I had someone read it properly rather than skim it, indicates was exceptional by any standard. She met his eyes. The accident doesn't erase the record. It's part of it. And frankly, the fact that you walked away from everything because of it, that you held yourself to a standard higher than what the incident review required, that's not a disqualification. That's evidence of the exact thing I want to teach. He looked at the mat. You don't have to answer now, she said. I know. I also want to say, she stopped, started again. The other thing in the letter. I want to be clear that the professional proposal is entirely separate. I'm not making them conditional on each other. If you want to take the position and everything else is something you want to leave alone, that's a legitimate answer and it won't change anything. He turned to look at her directly. And if I don't want to leave it alone? A silence. Not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that had weight. Then we figure out what it is, she said, slowly and honestly, and without either of us pretending we're not complicated people with complicated histories who are both significantly better at controlling physical space than emotional space. That's a very accurate description. I've been thinking about it for a while. I know. He looked at the mat again. I have too. Another silence. Outside, the city was warming up for its day. The gym hummed with its particular morning quiet, the quality of a space that was meant for effort, at rest. I don't do things slowly, she said. That's a genuine warning. I have to work at it. I know. I've watched you do 3 things quickly that you later decided were wrong. The rematch booking. And 2 others. She looked at him. What were the other 2? The first Thursday session. You came in trying to prove something instead of trying to learn something. I watched you reset around minute 12. That took me 12 minutes? 11 and a half, she exhaled. And the third? The board meeting 2 weeks ago. You started the speech 3 minutes in a direction that would have been the professional version rather than the honest version, and you caught it and changed it. Took you about 45 seconds. You were watching from the back. You invited the whole company. She was quiet for a moment.
You watch people very carefully. I was trained to. I can't turn it off. Does it bother people? Most people don't notice. I notice. I know. He looked at her. It doesn't seem to bother you. It doesn't, she said. That surprised me, actually. I usually don't like being read. I've been told I give very little away. You give more away than you think. To you. Maybe to people who are paying attention the right way. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, The position. Take some time with it. I'm not pulling it if you don't answer tomorrow. I'll answer Thursday, he said. Okay. And the other thing? Also Thursday, she said. If you want. Also Thursday. He stood up and picked up his water and moved toward the equipment room to start the morning. At the gym door, he stopped because something had been sitting in him since the parking lot, since the letter, since Sophie at the kitchen table saying he just forgot that people want it. Vanessa. She looked up. Sophie's science fair is next month, he said. The real one. The district level. She made it past the school round. With the tide pool? Yeah. He paused. She asked me last week if she could invite someone. I told her she could invite whoever she wanted. Vanessa looked at him steadily. Did she say who she wanted to invite? She said she wanted to invite someone who would appreciate the stratification. A silence. I appreciate stratification, Vanessa said carefully. I know you do, he said. I'll have her write you another letter. He went through the door. Behind him he heard, not a laugh, something more controlled than a laugh, but in the same family, something real. He called Reyes that afternoon, not about anything specific, just because Reyes had said call when you're not in crisis, and it had been 3 weeks, and he wasn't in crisis. He was the opposite of crisis, actually, which was its own unfamiliar territory. Reyes picked up on the second ring. Heart. Reyes. You sound different. Different how? Less like someone carrying something they won't put down. A pause. Did you put something down? Working on it. Good. The voice on the other end shifted slightly, the informal ease of two people who had done hard things together and had the particular shorthand of that. You call for a reason or just to call? Just a call. A pause, and then something Logan hadn't heard from Reyes in 4 years. A short, easy laugh. Look at you, Reyes said, making a phone call for no reason like a functional person. Don't make it a thing. It's a little bit a thing. Reyes. Okay. How's the kid? Second place at the school science fair. Made districts. No kidding. The tide pool? The tide pool. Smart girl, Reyes said. Takes after her old man. She takes after her mother. Sure, Hart, sure. Another pause. And the CEO? Logan looked out the window of his apartment at the early evening city. Still working on it. Still on 4 cleaning the gym. For now, there's an offer. I haven't answered yet. What kind of offer? He told him. Reyes was quiet through the telling, which was his way. He had always listened completely before responding, even at 23, even when every other young instructor candidate was already formulating their response halfway through your sentence. You're going to take it, Reyes said when Logan finished. I haven't decided. You're going to take it. You've been talking for 2 minutes about a job offer, and not once did you say the words, I don't think I'm qualified, or I don't know if I can do it. You just described what it is. Reyes paused. You always knew when a student was ready by whether they'd stopped asking permission from themselves. You've stopped asking permission. Logan was quiet. I mean it as a good thing, Reyes said. I know. Take the job, Hart. I'll think about it. You've already thought about it. Take the job. A pause. And if it's not just a job offer, it's complicated. Everything real is complicated. That's not actually a reason. Another pause. You spent 4 years in a building erasing yourself. You have an 8-year-old who can identify saltwater organism stratification and a woman who wrote you a letter without architecture. I think you've earned something complicated. He looked at the window. The city was doing what it did as evening came in. The light changing, the density of movement on the sidewalk shifting, the first restaurant smells starting to come up from the street below.
You're surprisingly wise for someone who once got baking soda in Tyler Marsh's solar system, Logan said.
That, Reyes said, was a different person.
Yeah, Logan said. It was. Thursday morning, 5:14. He was on the mat when she came through the door. You're a minute early, she said. I had an answer. She put her bag down. Already? I told you Thursday. She came and stood at the edge of the mat looking at him. And? Yes to the program, he said. With conditions. What conditions? I designed the curriculum. Not a committee, not your communications team. I'll take input, I'll work with people, but the structure of what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it comes from me. Agreed. I want a room, not a boardroom. A room with a mat and room to move. If I'm teaching people how to operate under pressure, I'm not doing it sitting around a conference table. Done. And I'm keeping my locker on 3. She paused. You want to keep your locker? It's a good locker. Marcus gave me the one near the window. Something moved through her face. Fine. You can keep the locker. He nodded once. The other thing, she said. Yeah. She waited. I'm not going to pretend I know how it goes, he said. I don't have a plan. I'm not good at this in the way I'm good at other things. I'm going to get it wrong sometimes, and I'm going to be worse at the slow part than you are, even though you said you'd be bad at it. That's a low bar. I know. He paused. What I can tell you is that I haven't looked forward to something that wasn't Sophie since before the accident, and I'm aware of what that means, which is why I'm saying it, because apparently I've been advised to say things directly to people when I have something to say. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Your daughter is going to be a formidable human being. She already is. I know. Her voice was softer than it usually was in this room, stripped of the last professional layer. I want to answer your conditions. Okay? Yes to all of them. She paused. And my condition is this. You don't disappear. If something gets hard or uncomfortable, or I make a call you think is wrong, you tell me. You don't go quiet. You don't manage the gap by widening it. That's fair. I'm serious. I've watched you make yourself invisible in this building for over a year. I don't want that version. I want the one that shows up on roofs and argues about curriculum and tells me when my guard is dropping. Your left guard still drops when you're tired. I know, and I want you to keep telling me. She looked at him steadily, and there was something in it. Not the CEO look, not the look she used to measure outcomes. Something more open, more uncertain, more real. Is this a terrible idea? He thought about it honestly. Parts of it are probably a bad idea, he said. Most of the important things are. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be reassuring. It was meant to be true. She held his gaze. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. The Nexus Leadership and Resilience program launched 8 weeks later in a converted training room on the 4th floor adjacent to the gym with a mat floor and movable walls and a whiteboard that Logan had specifically requested be writable on both sides. The first cohort was 18 people, a mix of managers, senior engineers, 2 VPs, and at Logan's specific request, Tara Wills, the event coordinator who had posted the video. Vanessa had raised an eyebrow at that inclusion. Logan had said, she documented something real when nobody else was paying attention. That's a skill set. Vanessa had not argued. The first session did not involve sparring. It did not involve exercises or assessments or the kind of icebreaker games that Logan had banned by name in the curriculum design. It involved 18 people sitting in a circle. Logan had kept the circle from Vanessa's all-company meeting because it was structurally honest, and one question written on the whiteboard that he did not explain or contextualize. The question was, what do you do when you're afraid you're wrong? They talked for 2 hours. At the end, Logan told them to come back in a week prepared to show him what they were actually good at. Not their job function, not their title. What they were actually good at, in their hands, and their judgment, and their instincts. He drove to pick up Sophie from school, feeling something he took him most of the drive to identify. It was the specific sense of being in the right place for the right reasons. Doing the thing you were built for, in a context where it could actually mean something. He had felt it before, a long time ago, before everything. He had thought it was gone. It was not gone. It had just been waiting for the right room. The district science fair happened on a Saturday morning in the gymnasium of Westbrook Middle School, 3 towns over, which was large enough that Sophie spent the drive there looking out the window with the specific focus of someone committing details to memory. Vanessa met them in the parking lot. Sophie saw her coming and turned to Logan with the expression of someone who had arranged something and was watching the arrangement unfold. "She came," Sophie said, with zero surprise and maximum satisfaction. "You invited her," Logan said. "I know." Sophie looked up at him. "Is that okay?" He watched Vanessa cross the parking lot in her jacket and her flat shoes, carrying a coffee she'd apparently gotten on the way, walking toward them with an expression that was trying to be professional and was not entirely succeeding. "Yeah," he said. "That's okay." Sophie took off toward Vanessa at a walk that was very close to a run, which was the closest Sophie allowed herself to running in public now that she was 8, and said, "I have stratification across 4 distinct depth zones, and I also have a live hermit crab named Carl." Vanessa crouched down to Sophie's level. Without being asked, without performance, just the simple choice to be at eye level with the person she was talking to, and said, "Tell me about Carl." Carl is technically Clibinarius vittatus, which is a saltwater hermit crab, and he is adapted to the middle stratum, which demonstrates behavioral response to habitat conditions, which is actually more interesting than just having him in the display tank because it shows dynamic interaction with the ecosystem rather than just its existence. Vanessa looked up at Logan over Sophie's head with an expression that said, "She's 8 years old." Logan said nothing. He did not hide the smile this time. He let it happen fully in the middle of a parking lot on a Saturday morning in front of his daughter and a woman who had arrived for a science fair carrying coffee, and it felt like the most natural thing he had done in 4 years. Sophie grabbed Vanessa's free hand and pulled her toward the entrance, already talking about the second depth zone. Vanessa went. She glanced back at Logan once, over her shoulder, with the undefended look that had become the version of her he knew best. Not the CEO, not the competitor, not the woman who had spent her whole life trying to earn a 6-minute phone call. Just a person, surprised to be happy, still figuring out what to do with it. He caught up to them at the entrance. Sophie didn't let go of Vanessa's hand. There is a thing people say about strength, that it is about never breaking, about holding the line, about being the last one standing. They build entire systems around this idea. They measure themselves against it. They pour years into it. Logan Hart had been strong in that way. He had trained his body and his mind to operate at the edge of capacity, to stay functional when everything else failed, to be the person in the room who did not bend. And then one afternoon on a training mat, strength had not been enough. A young man's arm. A fraction of a second. The irreversible weight of a single sequence that ended wrong. He had spent 4 years confusing 2 things, the failure of one moment and the failure of himself. He had treated them as the same thing. He had made himself invisible as a kind of penance, as if the act of being seen was the thing that needed to be punished. What he had not understood in those 4 years of early shifts and empty corridors and careful distance from everything that might require him to be someone again was that strength was never the absence of breaking. It was what you did with the break, whether you used it to disappear or whether you used it to become something more precisely calibrated than you had been before. Reyes had known that. He had been living it for 4 years in a gym in Meridian, working with bodies that had learned to work differently, building a practice out of the very thing that had broken him. Logan had looked at that and called it survival. It was more than survival. It was what strength actually looked like, not unbroken, rebuilt. Rebuilt with knowledge that unbroken things can never have. Vanessa had been learning this, too, from a different direction. She had built a life on the equation her father had given her. Excellence equals worth, results equal identity, winning equals being safe. She had run that equation for 30 years, and it had produced a company and a reputation and a framed magazine cover and a father who called for 6 minutes when the results were good enough. She had defended that equation against everything because to question it was to question everything she had made herself into. And then a janitor with quiet eyes had put her on a mat without arrogance and without cruelty and without any desire to prove anything, and the equation had started to fail. Not dramatically, just slowly, in the way things fail when they are no longer the right tool for the problem. When the problem has changed and the tool hasn't noticed. She was still learning. She would be learning for a long time. She still moved too fast sometimes, still reached for the professional frame when the personal one was what the moment required, still had days when her father's voice in her head was louder than her own. These were not things that resolved cleanly. They were things you worked on with the same patience and consistency you brought to a training sequence, session by session, adjustment by adjustment, falling down and getting up, and not pretending the falling hadn't happened. This was the actual shape of it when you took the architecture away. Not a clean arc, not a series of lessons that built toward an insight. Just two people, both cracked in specific ways, both carrying things they hadn't put down soon enough, finding out that someone else's particular cracks could fit against yours in a way that made the whole structure more stable rather than less. Sophie Hart had understood this before either of them. She had seen it in the way her father's face changed, the small, imperceptible loosening that only she had the baseline data to track. She had written a letter in pencil at a kitchen table because she had something to say, and she had been raised to say it. Carl the hermit crab took second place in the invertebrate category. Sophie accepted the ribbon with a seriousness that suggested she was already designing her entry for next year, and then immediately turned to Vanessa to explain the methodological improvements she intended to make to the water circulation system. Vanessa listened, not because it was useful, not because it produced anything, because a small scientist was telling her about water circulation with the full force of her attention, and it turned out that the full force of Sophie Hart's attention was a thing worth receiving. On the drive home, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat with Carl's travel container on her lap, her head tipped sideways against the window. Logan drove. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat with her coffee long gone cold, watching the city pass, the late afternoon light doing what late afternoon light did on these streets, gold and specific and impossible to hold. She's going to win next year, Vanessa said quietly, so as not to wake Sophie. She's going to win next year, Logan agreed, the same quiet. A pause. I'm going to have to learn a lot about saltwater ecosystems, Vanessa said. You're going to have to learn a lot about saltwater ecosystems, he confirmed. She looked at him. He was watching the road with the steady attention he brought to everything, and there was a looseness around his mouth that was not quite a smile and more than one. Something settled, something finally, tentatively, at home in itself. She looked back out the window. Behind them, Sophie breathed in the deep rhythm of someone entirely at rest, her hand still curved around the container in her lap. The city went on being the city. The afternoon light moved the way it moved, neither waiting nor hurrying. The three of them drove home through it.